My name is Magistra Asana van der Linden. Everybody calls me Linden. I'm from Ansteora, and I've been studying Ebru for about 5 years. I was super interested in it as a scribe because it's used in later period Turkish manuscripts. And I have a few references that I don't quite have solid, that it was used as a form of like copyright protection for famous poetry, especially in the Islamic world. I got into it because I'm a student mostly of German history and illumination and a scribe. And there are these things called Stammenbüchers, which are friendship books. It was like the back of your yearbook, and the people would carry them around, and they would have little bits of illumination in them. They would be interestingly decorated, and people would write notes and signatures and all kinds of lovely little tidbits of ephemera that we have today because they were doing that. And I found one that had Ebru in it. And I was like, what is this? That's insane. Why is there Ebru in this German book? That's because it was made as a tourist like thing for German visitors that were diplomats to Turkey in the 15 to 1600s. And I just adore this weird confluence of things, that all these little bits all gone together. And eventually I will make that Stammbücher if I ever get off my butt. But Ebru, as it is this wonderfully organic, weird piece of thing. You guys have seen paper marbling before, right? Essentially, that's what Ebru is. And it's part, the Chinese also have a separate form of paper marbling, but both the Chinese and the Turkish influence the arts in French paper marbling, like this. And you can do figurative things, like flowers and leaves. I've got laurels down, but I can't quite do pelicans yet. There's a lighter one. I studied under a guy who's from Turkey, which made, and English was like his fourth language. So it was an interesting thing to talk to him, because he would try to find a word for viscosity and just not get there. So let's talk about the tools while we talk about the sacredness of the thing. So Ebru is used in border bands to decorate illumination, and it's used over text as a way of protecting the text and proving that it's from a particular author or a particular poet. These are the weird brushes we use. By tradition, this is a rosewood stick, and this is horsehair. I have horsehair from my friend's horse, but I haven't made my own yet. I bought these on the internet. They come in a couple of different sizes. You've got little bitty ones and biggie ones. These bands here would originally have been sinew, but they are plastic in the new ones. And as you use them, they get the color of the paint you're using stuck on them, and you kind of just keep using the ones in the same color, because you can wash them all you want. They're still going to have like a trace of that color in them. They also are not made like paintbrushes as we would think of them. They have like a well in the center, because the brushes are actually around, the bristles are around the outside of the stick. So in here, there is this like amazing little well that holds on to way more paint than it should, and allows you to like have this reservoir there, so that when you tap it across your hand to make the batal, you've got way more paint there. Paint. So you can use just about any kind of paint for this. I'm using Orion Ebru, which is backwards to you and you can't read it, but you can buy these on Amazon, which I was amazed by. But this is paint specifically designed for Ebru that's made in Turkey. It feels a lot like very nice gouache without enough gum Arabic in it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? You got any painters in today? It's very creamy and feels a little bit like oobleck, because when you push on it hard, it gets harder, and then it gets smoother if you stir it or shake it. But you don't actually use the paint out of these jars. You have to thin the paint by quite a big degree in order to make it work. I have nearly a rainbow of colors. yellows and blacks and blues and reds. And you mix them up in these separate jars, you add water to them, and you shake the snot out of them for a little while before you actually do the Ebru. And now, fun bit. Does anybody have a favorite color they want to include in the Ebru today? No? Oh, I didn't talk about the water. The water. If anybody is like a gastronomist, you probably know about carrageen, which is a vegan substitute for gelatin. Now, in period, they used the sap of a particular bush that grows only in Turkey and might be endangered, and I haven't been able to get my hands on any. But this is what modern Ebru artists use. And you boil water and you put enough in the water. And I would tell you exactly how much, except it changes depending on the heat and the humidity and the weirdness. It's all very like, you have to get a feel for it. But when you stick your finger in the water, it should feel slimy, like you've upset a frog or something. Not, it's not thick like honey. It should be just enough that it sticks to you and it feels slimy. Like the coat the back of a spoon metaphor for soup. So you mix the carrageen into that. I think I used 3 tablespoons this time, or 3 spoons of whatever size that was in my drawer when I was boiling the water, to about 2 quarts of water. And you can save the Ebru water for quite a long time, as long as you keep it in your fridge. And don't forget about it in a drawer or something where it becomes science, because it will become science, maybe sentient science. To prepare paper to do Ebru, that's not the right jar. This is the right jar. Is everybody familiar with alum? This is a mineral that is used in paints and glazes and all sorts of things to make color brighter, or as a paper size to make whatever it is adhere to the surface. So what you do is you take paper and you mix about 2 tablespoons of alum into about a gallon of boiling water, and then use a sponge to sponge it over the paper and then allow the paper to dry before you do the Ebru. If you don't, you get much lighter colors, like these examples here, where you get, this is the one without alum, and this is the one with. Yes, there are lighter colors involved here, but just in general, you can see that it's just not, it didn't take the color as well, even though I was using the same kind of paint. You can print Ebru on whatever paper you want. Mulberry paper is traditional. They also use what we would think of as watercolor paper, and I've seen it also on parchment, although you gotta really be comfortable with that, because parchment. Okay, so we've got water here that you can't see, and we've got paints there, which you also can't see. So I'm going to switch my camera so you can see what I'm doing with my hands. Everybody cool with that? Are there any questions yet? No? I cannot tell you guys how much I appreciate you allowing yourselves to be on camera so I can feel like I'm talking to you. Okay, so this is the water. This is just a really big cake pan. You need to use one made of non-reactive metal or plastic. Plastic sometimes will get wiggly on you. I put a black trash bag over it so you can actually see the color as it flows, because having taught this class before, you can't see nothing if it's just floating on top of the silver surface of the back of the pan. Now, if we just dropped paint on this, and watch, it's not gonna listen to me because that's what happens. So the correct technique is to shake it like this. All right, you see how that just forms little droplets and it's not spreading out? That's because there isn't enough oxgall in this paint to allow it to spread on the surface of the water. So there's a bunch of different kinds of oxgall. There is a synthetic you can purchase, which is made for paper marbling. Can you guys see that? No, not really. How about there? Is that better? So there's a synthetic marbling agent. So this is what you could use if you don't want to use oxgall. This definitely doesn't smell as bad as oxgall, which oxgall does smell bad, like the inside of an ox, which is where you get oxgall. It's a different brand of oxgall, which you also cannot see. Why do not focus, camera? Nope. Maybe if I turn off your light. Almost. Hey, how about that? Okay, and you can also buy that from Winsor and Newton, because it is a fluid used to help watercolor paints spread over stuff. It does go bad, so be careful with it, or keep it in your fridge. You can extend the life that way, or you can just have a sealed bottle in backup and be glad that you did. Okay, so I'm going to use the sealed bottle because I think it's probably better than the one I forgot about in my drawer. Very loud, crinkly crap. Okay. And you want to add a couple of drops of the oxgall to the paint. I'm going to put a whole bunch in because that stuff didn't spread at all. And let's see if it's any better now. Nope. Maybe it also needs more water. That's also a thing it could need. I always feel a little bit like some kind of sorcerer when I'm trying to figure this out, because it's always a little bit different depending on how old the paint is and how like hydrated it is and how much oxgall is in it. You want to keep a bottle of water, like a bottle of distilled water, hanging around so that you can do the thing where you rehydrate the paints, because the paints last forever. Like these are like at least 6 years old at this point. Say again? With water in them, and you just put the lid on the jar and then you put it back in the box. So you want to make sure you use distilled water so you don't get crap in there if you can help it. Although with the oxgall, you wouldn't be able to smell whether or not you got crap in there. Okay, let's see now. Nope. Do not bring me a cat. I'm trying to teach these poor people about Ebru. No, you can't show them the cat. Go away. Sad. You can show them the cat at the end of the class. I'll be gone. Sorry, gentlemen and lady. All right. Let's try a different color and see if it's just that color being weird. Tell you what, it's like, you know how you have a class sometimes and you're really excited to show people and then nothing goes correctly? That is the life. Okay, I'm gonna use white, which should be like the easiest one, because you know how pigments affect the material. Like if you're doing lamp work, some pigments are meltier than others, and sometimes pigments like in clay are hotter than others. Oh, that one's trying to spread. Look at you. Hey. Okay, so just random splotches on water of at least of 2 to 3 colors is called a batal. And a batal is the basic pattern that would have been used in history. Now, it's not all I want to show you today, because there's a lot out there in Ebru that you can do that's not a batal. But what it's supposed to do is what it's trying to do here, spreading out on the surface of the water. And you need to remember in your composition that the white spots will be empty. They'll be bare on your paper. Is everybody doing okay? Is there any questions? Nope.
No questions in the chat.
That's not behaving well either. It's supposed to do the other thing. Hey, Oliver. Go get me a cup of cold water, please.
Yeah.
Like a big one.
How big? Like big or just cup?
Would you stop being an argumentative teenager and just give me a big cup of water?
I'm asking how big of a cup.
I did test this before I set up, and it was working. Now I don't want to. Okay. And that thing that's happening right now where the water is kind of moving, you never want that to happen, but you know, sometimes that happens. Thank you. All right, and now we need a contrast color. Got any votes? We want indigo, black. Okay, let's do this proper like. So it's always a gentle tapping over the edge of your hand. Oh, the blue is behaving beautifully. Look at you, blue. See how it wants to spread out on the surface, pushing the other cells away. There's another tool in Ebru, and it's called a stylus for the reason that that's what it is. And one of its fun uses is that you can erase things that you don't want. Like maybe I don't like this circle. Well, then I can stick the stylus into the circle and pull the paint up all the way out of the composition. So it's like, it can be an eraser, but it's also your pencil where you use other colors like this green, and you make circular drops, except that one's not floating on the water. And the wider, there are a bunch of different sizes of stylus, but the wider it is, the more surface area it has, so it can transfer more pigment to the surface of the water. So. And sometimes when you're doing this, you probably want to add some other color to it, like black or white, which makes an edge within the circle. Make another one. And I'm being too careless and not going straight up and down, so the circle is not perfect. But you just plant like that. Really want the circle to be round and not be weird at you, but no, nothing's perfect. Okay, so you always want to dry your stylus. I have this gross rag on my shoulder that I'm using to do this with. You always want to dry your stylus before you draw with it, because it attaches to the paint differently than it would if you were just drawing. And also it transfers things like it just did. So then you spread the blobs up like that, and then you can run through it and make leaves. Do you guys see that? Some pretty lame leaves, I must say. But if you're careful, you can make laurel wreaths, and tulips are very popular. Carnations, roses. So to make a carnation, you would use a skinnier stylus and bring down some of the red into the bulb. And then you want to bring out very fuzzy edges of the carnation. Of course, it's not going to behave today. And now we get to print. Okay, so you want to have paper that is about the size of your pan. And then you get to be ye olde medieval copy machine. Junk out of the way. So you have a stylus in your hand when you lay it on top. You want to put the middle down first. And then you run your stylus around the corners to make sure that there are no air bubbles and you're picking up everything. And then you have to stick the thing under here so you can catch a corner or something. And oh, I had 2 pages. That's terrible. And then you kind of pull it over the edge of the thing. The picture's gone. And oh my gosh. Here's the thing over here. Now, this is probably the ugliest flower I've ever made in my whole life, but you can see the proof of concept, yeah? Okay. So I use this stuff as gifts or as extras. I often work with a bookbinder and make papers for her to include in the bookbinding, specific colors or decorations or patterns that they want to include. It's a filthy craft. I am already gross. I've only done one. It's amazing what kind of mess it makes. Usually I put a cardboard, like you're going to the science fair and this is your science fair project thing, on the other side of it, because when you're flicking the paint, the range of that stuff is just amazing. So, do you guys have any questions? No? Do you just want to chat and play with Ebru today? Oh, look at you behaving beautifully now, of course.
Protect your garb or your clothes while you're doing this, or is it possible to protect your garb or your clothes while you're doing this art?
Well, I mean, I'm sure other people would be less messy. I'm the kind of person that gets a burrito all over my person when I eat. So I think that I might be doing it more than perhaps is necessary. But I think wearing an apron would probably help. I usually just wear a simple piece of, why is my computer off? That's not helping. There you go. I usually wear simple garb that's easy to wash. And mostly these pigments don't stain because they are essentially big honkin' watercolors, if that makes sense. But sometimes they do, especially if you wear a light color like white or something like that. So, keep your sleeves out of it and you should be okay. All right, let's make some magic.
Is there a certain kind of paper that works better than other kinds of paper for this?
Yeah, the watercolor paper is a much better substrate for it, partly because it's thicker and partly because it's intended to grab things that are wet. And it is almost always got some kind of size on it unless you're trying to use arches for this, which I shouldn't because it's expensive. Like the kind of watercolor paper you buy in the store usually has some kind of size on it. If you touch the paper, you can feel how it slightly sticks to your fingers. But you shouldn't do that because you don't want to put your oils on other people's watercolor paper in the store. Like only do that if you're buying it, I guess. Let's see, what else fun things can we do? If you look at it on the internet, people do amazing things with this art. I've done better things when I could get it to behave. Sorry, I'm trying to find my other stylus. There it is.
Do you lay them flat to dry?
I actually have this huge apparatus over there, which is the thing I used to hang my clothes on when I would go to camping events. And it's got a clothesline on it and clothespins, and I just pin it up there. And when you do Ebru, it's not a let's try this out one time. It's a invite all your friends and do all the Ebru you wanted for 6 months, because you're going to make a mess, and you don't need to do it all the time. Not a craft I practice every day. So what I'm trying to do here is display the leaf making technique better. So you take the edges of the leaf and pull them outward very slightly like that. And that starts to flatten this shape. This is going to be terrible because it's not really a circle anyway. And pull that way. You have to be careful not to move the water too much because it will continue to move the paint. And then you just draw through. The thing that I really love about this is how organic it is. There is no controlling this nonsense. There is no preciseness. I've seen people be precise with it, but I don't understand how they do that. It is all chaos all the time. And it's sort of being a very precise scribe that like over illuminates things, and just like you're making, I need this to be exactly this size. That's how it was in the book. And, you know, I get too caught up in these details. And this is a very freeing craft for me because it's messy and you can't help it. Like you're gonna have to deal with the results, and it is still fun no matter what you do. So I enjoy it. So what I'm doing right now is trying to make a more even batal so that I can show you guys some of the other techniques that you can do to create interesting papers. Just trying to make sure I've got good coverage. Okay. Let's do yellow or something on top of that, or Kixies. So I'm sticking the brush in the paint, and since I just put some oxgall in there, I'm trying to mix it around so that it all gets incorporated and also is not, you know, made of chunky, you know, solidified paint mess. And ooh, there's something hanging. That's not okay. All right. Oh, that did not have enough in it. You can also test your paint much less messily by dipping a stylus in there and flicking one drop on the surface of your paint of your waters. But I apparently couldn't be bothered today. When you're Googling Ebru, you will also find that it's a very popular Turkish lady's name because it means clouds. And I find that quite romantic that like, they figured out how to do this, and they were floating all these pigments on the water, and they thought of it as this sacred practice. Like you sing songs and you work together around like large things to do this. So it's both a communal practice and a highly religious one. And it was usually used to decorate religious texts. So if you pull quickly, you get this double swirled pattern. You see the swirls coming off the outside line. And if you pull very slowly, you get a smooth line. that looks a lot like more like those feathered versions of marbled papers everybody's seen someplace, you know. It's looking a little starry night, I think, guys. They also have combs, which I have one, but I have no idea where it went. That is essentially a stick that has nails on it, the length or width of your thing, so you can make them very smoothly and easily and evenly. I'm sorry that today I have no idea where that is. All right. You can swirl randomly or you can do it like this, but you can't take too long. Can you guys see the paint starting to break up? I always called it pixelation because when you print it, it looks like a bad printer job. It starts to get kind of weird on the edges and it literally looks like it's pixelated. When you pull it off, it's not the smooth consistency of the Ebru before. Sorry, I'm opening the other one to see if it's better at making oxgall things. So let's see. Also, you'll find that your surface will get saturated so that it resists you adding things to it, because the water tension, the surface tension of the water only can take so much paint. Seems like it's better. Let's see. So you can also do a spatter batal, which is the batal underneath and then drops on top of that. I have a this is sorry. This is a smooth feathered design. This one is a bunch of layers of batal and then the green is on top. These white spots are blank paper, actually, instead of the white, because you can use turpentine sprinkled over the surface to make holes in your Ebru, because it pushes all of everything away. Here is a better example of the thing I was trying to do just now, since my stuff is just not behaving. And here are drops on top of a feathered design that's going diagonally. And I know this all just looks kind of like a mess, but you can really get into the minutia of it. Here was a attempt at half of a laurel wreath. It's weirdly difficult to do because you're effectively kind of drawing down and then that water will push against the other side and you have to be careful as you pull the other way. So now that we've let that sit for a while, this is the Ebru paper that came with my Ebru kit, which you can buy online. On Amazon, they sell a basic kit that has most of the tools and like a basic color palette. You need to buy jars separately so that you can, goodness me, so that you can mix your paints, but it's fairly complete. Okay, so can you guys see what I meant about how it gets weirdly pixelated? Can you see how the color broke up and is being weird? All right, so what do you want to do now? We've got about 15 minutes or so before we should start clearing out for the next person to get set up. Does anybody have any questions? Should we stop recording now? I just wanted to close it out and make sure that I mentioned that you can get the starter set of Ebru paints from Ebru Studios. I got mine through Amazon. You can probably get it through them directly, or the paints that I use that are from Turkey, which were also available on Amazon. These are more expensive, but they seem to be much higher quality. And you can get all the other stuff just about any art store. And I just am really grateful for you guys coming to learn with me today. Thank you very much. I'm Magistra Sana van der Linden from Bryn Gulad and Steora, and thank you for having me today.